to bring about a change, it has to be done gradually. Okay. We faced a very real example in the creative dignity process where uh, artisans and producers were so used to producing against orders. They receive an order, they churn out 100, 500,000 pieces, and they deliver the order. They were not interested in uh, proactively taking photographs, creating catalogs to try and sell the stock that they were sitting on. They were not used to it. They were not used to the B2C side of things because they had been operating in the B2B realm for so long, you know. Um, so it took, I think, some change comes when you're pushed into it, like COVID has fast tracked digital literacy and digital adoption. In 2 months, we moved 2 years. All right, so we were forced into it, and some change comes from bringing awareness that this change is needed. So don't fight the reluctance. I think work with it, drill down, see where you can, and take small steps. You know, it's small steps that lead up to big changes. So try it that way, and hopefully it will work. And ultimately, if it comes down to survival, the change will happen. Whether you like it or not, the change will happen. So better to be proactive rather than reactive.
I would like to welcome Smita ma'am to our college. We are very glad to have you here. I would like to introduce her. Smita Mankad is a business and social enterprise consultant and an independent director on the boards of Mahindra Group of Companies and the Women on Women's Foundation that is creating 1 million jobs for women in rural India. She has over 25 years of experience spanning the corporate, social, and government sectors. As the managing partner at Fab India, she was responsible for setting up 18 community-owned companies that formed Fab India's supply chain. This was a path-breaking initiative where rural artisans were made shareholders, thereby giving them a direct share in profits. She is also the co-founder and member of the Governing Council at Creative Dignity, a volunteer movement that emerged to help artisans and crafts people in distress as part of the COVID relief efforts. I would like to mention that our college is also a part of this Creative Dignity project, and we will have 2 students share their experience who are at different stages in the project after the presentation by ma'am. So over to you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Ashi, and I welcome Smita. And Smita and me, we both are a part of the Vital Voices Global Leadership Network. And it's always a pleasure to have Smita talk to young people, women, artisan community. So I'm glad that today we have students who've actually passed out this year. And because of the COVID, there's a lot of ambiguity, there's a lot of fear, what's the possibility, what's going to happen, how our career is going to shape up. So here we have Smita, who's got a lot of opportunities for us, looking at how the craft sector can create whole new realm of opportunities where it's now truly defined as a luxury segment, right? And welcome Smita once again. And we doing the global mentoring box together in Delhi. That's how our association has really kept us together with each other. But yes, today's session is going to be very special. We're not just going to talk about women, but we're going to talk about young people. We're going to talk about communities. We're going to talk about craft. We're going to talk about design. So thank you, Smita, for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Archana. Always a pleasure to be part of your work. And I'm just so glad that, our paths connect in so many ways. And we really have a lot in common. So very excited to speak with your student community and the larger community today. So should I start?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to just chat for 2 minutes, and I have a few slides. I'll do a share screen so we can walk through that, and then open to question answers, and feel free to ask me anything. So for today, I really, I want you all to open your minds and look at things very differently. You know, we are at a place in October 2020, we are 6 months into a very interesting and unusual year. Everybody's lives have been impacted from top to bottom. Um, and I think it's given all of us a lot of time to think and introspect. But it has also given us time to think about where we want to go forward after this. How do we want to do things? Do we want to do things in the same way that we have been doing, or do we want to do something different? You know, we've actually got an opportunity to reset after, you know, reevaluating. And I think this is the time we should really take this time to reevaluate the choices we've made, the way we work, the way we live, and see what we want to change. I mean, we may not change everything, but we should really question. I mean, my point to you is question absolutely every choice that you're making, and see if you still feel committed to it going forward, given the reality, because things are going to be different. But you know, the world is our oyster. If you believe in free will, then think of it as a unique position where you have 100% free will. What would you do if you could really do absolutely anything? What would you do? So I'm just putting that out there upfront, because I'm going to come back to it at the end of the ideas I want to share. I also want to tell you that you know, there are no answers. There is no silver bullet. There is no magic wand. We are on this journey together. We're exploring. We're trying different things. We have been throughout history. So at every point in history, we have options. We experiment. Some work, some don't. But what is unique now is that we are actually collaborating. You know, it's one thing that I've seen different in the last 6 months is that this sector, our crafts, creative industries, which has always worked in silos, has come together for the first time and is really talking to each other and is really looking at the core issues and saying, what can we do to help? You know, so I'm very hopeful. I'm a very optimistic person, and I look at the future with great hope. And as students, you are the ones who are going to take this forward. You know, so I want to put just some ideas before you, and I want you to think about it and see where it takes you in the future. Okay, so I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I want to start from a historical perspective, and I will start. I'm going to read this very interesting quote. This is from 100 years ago. This is something that Mahatma Gandhi wrote in Young India in May of 1919. So allow me to read it to you, and please see the words that he is using. Okay, saying the industrial arts and handicrafts, considered as inessential luxuries, are practically ignored even by recognized authorities on economics. They have found it impossible to realize the connection between art and industry and to appreciate the value of quality or a high standard of workmanship. That is so because they have never attempted to interpret national wealth in terms of life. Will India benefit by the mistakes of the West? Her rare industrial arts and handicrafts are not yet extinct. They merely require the recognition and encouragement. But if that is not immediately forthcoming, it will be too late. We shall then be guilty of strangling them with our own hands. Take a minute and think about this. This is 100 years ago. How much do you think has changed? Have we recognized handicrafts? How much have we? Have we made the connection between art and industry? Are our crafts extinct? Have they survived? What have we done to really integrate them and help them survive? So if you break this down and you look at it, not a lot has changed in 100 years. And why is that? All right, so just think about it. So I want to take us through a little bit of the historical perspective. You know, the crafts help define us as Indians. It is one of our strongest identities. It's all around us, and still invisible. We live with crafts in our daily lives. The clothes we wear, the jewelry we wear, the vessels we eat out of, the pots we put our plants in, absolutely the jharu with which our homes are cleaned, the wall art in our homes. Absolutely everything used to be made by hand. Now it could be machine or handmade, but we still do not recognize the craftsmanship that goes into making many of these everyday products. And as you've seen, it's been integral to the Swadeshi movement. The charkha became a symbol of self-reliance. And so where did it all change? So the industrial, India used to be so rich in handloom and handcraft, and that was for 5,000 years, we were weaving our own textiles. And then with industrialization in the West, when machines came in to weave, that's when the whole thing changed for us. And with the British influence, it changed further. And you're familiar with that part of our history and how we were systematically removed from our handmade production. And we were forced. Gandhiji and Tagore, brought crafts and handicrafts and arts as the central issue, as one of the central issues of self-reliance and the freedom movement. But as you can see, it was not easy for them either. I mean, we're talking about Gandhiji, and he was struggling to really bring, the status of crafts and the artisans to the central stage. So we're walking on the shoulders of giants, but we still have, a long way to go. So where are we today? How much do we recognize our crafts? Are we surrounded by awareness about them or ignorance of the value that these crafts and the impact that they have on sustainability, on preserving our traditional knowledge, on the complexity of skills? I mean, all of you are design students and very intimately and you know the process that goes into a handmade product. You are lucky that you can see you've done it with your own hands. You've gone out to clusters and artisans' homes, and you have seen how a loom is set, how a piece of wood or marble is carved, how a potter makes the most complex, beautiful designs on his wheel. So you know that, but we are a minority. Most people will go through life without seeing this. It is invisible, They may go to exhibitions where there might be one potter sitting on a wheel as a demo, but what goes into making something is still not visible to most people who consume it. And which is why I think that the decision on whether to use a handmade item or to use a machine-made item is not something that comes to the mind of most people when they are consuming. So should I buy a polyester top from any online platform, or should I buy a hand block printed kurta? Unless I have seen this being made and I understand the level of skill and beauty that has gone into it, how will I make that choice? I am not informed. So ignorance, I think, is one of our biggest challenges. And as design students, you need to carry that torch forward, even if you just start by educating your families. At a national or at a larger level, I think the whole sector has been diluted because we do not have a champion. We do not have a Gandhiji today who is fighting for khadi. We do not have an icon. We do not have someone who's really put their stamp on it and said, this is what we need. All right. There is a lack of pride. And I feel that when we bargain with craftspeople and when we go into stores and ask for rebates, or every government emporia that has that permanent 20%, 30% rebate banner, don't you think we're diluting the value of the handwork that has gone into this? I mean, you're starting off with discounting a highly skilled artisan. So think about it. I mean, these are small things that you may or may not have noticed, but they all feed into the larger perspective of where we are today. There is also a great indifference towards the marginalized communities that form the artisan community. So from the wider artisan community, 50% are made up of SC, ST, tribal, other marginalized communities, and women. So where does that leave us? Do they have a voice? What is their status in their own villages and societies? I remember traveling, to remote weaving clusters, and in one of them in rural Karnataka, it was shared that no one in the village wanted to marry their daughter to a weaver because he was really at the bottom of the social pyramid, and they did not see that as it did not matter what his level of skill was. That was the social hierarchy. So till we don't start to recognize and respect and change that reality, how are we going to raise artisans from the marginalized communities, in which they have been embedded for so very long, right? Okay, so where do we want to go? What is the blue sky thinking? What is the vision we have for the creative industries? I think more and more the answer lies in being self-reliant, in creating local economies, in creating smart villages. We talk about smart cities, and we have 100 smart cities around India now, but we need to think about smart villages. And I know there is an initiative to do that, but our crafts and artisans form really the central heart of this. And you would already know that crafts, the livelihoods created through crafts is second only to agriculture in our country. So it is the second largest creator of livelihoods in our country. So, you just cannot, the relevance and the importance is so much, you can't ignore it. So as much as we pay attention to farmers and agriculture, I think we need to pay as much attention to artisans and to the crafts. But having said that, it's very important to reinvent ourselves to stay relevant. And this has happened throughout history. The products that were used 200 years ago are not used today. So it's not enough to say that we will continue to make matkas for drinking water. Yes, it's eco-friendly. Yes, we do it, but how many people keep a pani ka matka, a mud pot in their homes for water anymore? So let's reinvent. And this is just one example out of a million. But if we want artisans to continue to be relevant and to have work in the future, we have to constantly reinvent not only their products, but the way they work. So, okay. So this is just a big picture. There are many ways to get there. All of them are work in progress. There is no silver bullet. Like I said, there is no answer. Experiment and try, and hopefully every effort that you and I make will help artisans, to stay relevant. I can share with you very briefly, when I say this work in progress, I have had experience over the last, I would say 18 years over different models, over different experiments. And I can share some of them with you. So Fab India's community-owned companies, which we started setting up in 2007, actually came about at the end of a long range of experiments and experiences. So there was the experiment with a cooperative, there was the experiment with a trust structure, then there was the first, artisan-owned company. And as it evolved and as we learned and as we developed the model, in 2007, we felt ready to create many of these. So we set up 18 community-owned companies. Each one was a separate legal entity in a different part of India. And it had a CEO, it had a team, it had a warehouse, and it was the melting pot for all the artisans of that geography. So every artisan that we worked with, whether it was a master craftsman, an NGO, a large exporter, the size and scale did not matter as long as they were working as part of Fab India supply chain. They became shareholders in these companies. So we shifted the relationship from just being a buyer-seller, where we were placing orders and buying products and then selling them through Fab India stores, to really making them partners in our progress. And all the companies had the same framework, but each one performed a little bit differently. So depending on the profits they made, at the end of the year, the artisans received dividends and shares, and they became owners. And this was a very, uplifting experience, because they learned fast from day one, where they did not know what a share was. They did not understand what this piece of paper meant. They had never owned an asset before, please understand. And shares were so far removed from their realm of understanding. But they took a leap of faith. They said, fine, we trust you, we've been working with you. If you say, and we made them pay, it was 100 rupees a share. We said, you have to buy this. It is not something we are giving you free. And cut to 2 years later, they were questioning us, saying, this year you have only given us 15% dividend. Why not 20% dividend? All right. So the learning curve was very fast. They became involved, they became engaged, and they truly felt like owners and partners in this movement. So this was one experience. Now, Women on Wings Foundation was started by 2 Dutch women who came to India and had this big dream to create 1 million jobs for women in rural India. So very specific, 1 million jobs for women in rural India. So not urban India, not men, but specifically for women. And we're at about 300,000 jobs now. And the way this is being done is that Women on Wings bring mentoring expertise to existing social enterprises. So there's an evaluation process. They identify who needs support so that they can grow, become sustainable, continue to be profitable, and so they can continue to hire and employ more women and create more jobs for women in rural areas. So many of these livelihoods are in crafts, in textiles, in sericulture, and now in agriculture. So across the board, experts are brought in. They are embedded with the social enterprise. Support is provided depending on whether it's... So Women on Wings does not give funding. It brings business expertise. It brings whatever, it helps to fill the gap in expertise that that enterprise needs. And so it co-creates the jobs on the ground, right? So this was another experience. A third one I want to share, there is a very nice short film on YouTube on this. If you're familiar with ICA, which is the All India Association, Artisans and Crafts Workers Association, which is an umbrella body which issues the craft mark tags and certifies genuine crafts across our country. Some years ago, they asked me to create a business plan to to really engage with 5,000 weavers in Banaras and help them reinvent. The outcome of this was a producer company called Mubarakpur Weaves, which became an artisan-owned producer company and has been successful. And so I feel proud to be part of the initial brainstorming and think tank of how this was set up and done. And why I like this experiment really is because the artisans were trained and empowered to run their own business. It was not me and you. It was not someone starting an NGO. Yes, a lot of mentoring and handholding was done, but the people running it are the weavers from the community. So it is not that they cannot do it. You have to identify who can and then invest in training them, so that they can do it. Okay. Now, the latest experiment and the most exciting one, because it's unique. I've never been part of something like this before. This is something called creative dignity. Now, at the end of April, many of us in this sector, we were talking to each other, saying we need to do something for the artisans. They are in distress. There was nothing forthcoming from the government at that time. There was no financial package. There was no loan waiver, as was being done for farmers. Nothing really for the creative industries. So creative dignity emerged as a group of volunteers who came together to offer whatever they had, expertise, experience, their own networks. And we did create a structure. We had help. So if you can imagine that all the designers in this country, all the artisans in this country, all the people running social enterprises and product design firms, e-commerce platforms, professionals like me, students, design schools, absolutely everybody you can think of came together to offer whatever they could. And the outcome is there to see, in 3 months. So we had very clear verticals. We said we are going to first focus on relief. We're going to do a fundraiser. We're going to raise money. And we're going to send out funds, relief, whether it's money or food, to people to artisans on the ground who are in distress. Now, how do we identify and find these and make sure that they're genuine and that the relief is going to the genuine people? That's where again, quite spontaneously, state-level volunteers emerged and state hubs got formed. So everyone in one state came together. One person offered to be kind of the in charge or to lead the movement at a state level, and they organized themselves. So now we have 28 state hubs that are operating, that have networks on the ground, that can reach the last mile, artisan. And relief efforts were very successful. Then we moved into rehabilitation. And the first part of rehabilitation was to help artisans sell stocks that they were sitting on. All their channels of sale, exhibitions, or everything had dried up. Markets were closed. Retailers were not picking up stock. So how do they sell? Their money was blocked. So we did two things. We sent out a diagnostic, collected data on who was sitting on what stock and where. We got 1,200 responses. We got to know that about 150 crores of stock was stuck in the system just with these 1,200. And the numbers, we're talking 1,200. We know that there are millions of artisans. So this was a drop in the ocean, but it was a place for us to start. We then partnered to create catalogs. So there was this whole initiative of digital literacy and helping artisans move into a realm that they had been was so far away from. Very simple templates were created, and students like you taught them how to take photographs with their smartphones and to create catalogs. Then these catalogs, we linked up to online e-commerce platforms. So whether it was Amazon or Okai or Go Co-op or Itokri or Jaipur, many of them came together to help us list these artisans so that they could go to market directly. So this was our rehabilitation initiative. And we are working now on continuing this. It is live as we speak. So please look at the website creativedignity.org. And there is, you can follow through, link through to the sales of artisan products on our different websites. And this has been successful. It's a drop in the ocean, but it's a beginning. And amongst the volunteers, I think one of the most successful aspects, apart from professionals and designers coming forward, was students coming forward through design schools and really partnering one-on-one with artisans and forming these teams and pair bonds that has really brought us to where we are today. So this continues. Of course, we have a longer-term vision for creative dignity. We want to look at rejuvenation of the entire creative industries sector, but we come to that as we go along. So I'm just going to stop a second here, and just to make sure that you can hear me and you can see me and it's going okay. Can someone from Arch just let me know if it's all okay?
Yes, ma'am, it's all right. We can see and hear you as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So one thing I want to tell you is that going forward, and we only have 10 years left. 10 years is not a long time. If you know about the Sustainable Development Goals, the target to achieve these 17 SDGs is 2030, and we are quite far behind. But if you look at crafts specifically and the impact it has, and you map it against the SDGs and the 17 SDGs, you will see that crafts actually has an impact directly or indirectly on all 17. And it is the only industry that actually does this. So this is open to interpretation. I mean, this is my analysis of the direct, indirect impact, but 6 of them are direct. So when we talk of no poverty, when we talk of gender equality, decent work and economic growth, reducing inequality, responsible consumption and production, and climate action. These I see really as direct impact of SDGs. And all the others we actually do impact, but a little more indirectly. But it's open to interpretation. So if you talk about hunger, health, and education, the minute you put money in the hands of women artisans, you know that their families are going to receive better healthcare, better education, and more food, right? So we can say that as an outcome of craft livelihoods, you are also impacting 2, 3, and 4. Clean water and energy, again, indirect impact. I won't go into each of these, but really in terms of the direct ones, think about where, so what my point is that when you are working in this sector or you are thinking about where to go with it, map your actions and your interventions against the SDGs and question where you're doing this and how you're doing it. And especially under responsible consumption and responsible production, which is one of the key aspects within the creative industry's impact. Okay? So I'm just going to leave this thought with you. I want to share this. It is a quote from Ashok Chatterjee, who was former director of NID and patron at Crafts Council of India. What he says is that the sector offers is the stability of its livelihood potential, as well as its social, political, environmental, cultural, export, and even spiritual elements. So there is no area of work, no industry, if we can call it that, that is so all-encompassing and circular in its nature. And the nature of life itself is circular. So why shouldn't how we approach it and what we use be circular in nature? And you and I are so lucky, firstly, to live in India, to know and be aware of its cultural and craft history, and to be able to practice it. So given this scenario of this kind of very holistic area in which we work, for me, it's very satisfying because there is no difference between the internal and the external. You know, there is a connection that does not, I do not have to be two different people. It really, for me, it flows seamlessly through every choice I make and every decision I make. And I hope that it will for you as well. What do we need? Or really, what does the industry need? And what do artisans need? You know? So very quickly, let's look at what the industry needs. Now, first of all, we have to recognize it as an industry, as creative industries. We cannot anymore call it just the craft sector and cottage industries. We should not call it unorganized. It is not unorganized. It is informal because it operates at a grassroots level. It operates at every level, from the bottom of the pyramid to the top. But calling it unorganized is not only wrong, it is disrespectful to the artisan. So if you have seen a loom being set and a warp being set, do you think anyone who was unorganized could ever set a warp? The kind of detailing and eye to detail and meticulous micro level work and the number of steps that go into it, unless you're organized, you cannot even begin to do that. So that's the very first thing. What we need is data. We still don't know in our country how many artisans we have. Is it 7 million, which is the government estimate, or is it 200 million, which is the informal estimate? The truth lies somewhere in between, but till we know who they are and where they are, what they need, how do we even begin to develop solutions, all right? The other thing is that we think of, in India, since independence, craft sector, as it was known, has always been seen as a sunset industry. You know that China calls their handcraft sector as the sunrise industry. So we need to change our perspective of how we look at this and give it the importance that it deserves. The minute you say sunset, you've already put it to bed. I mean, how are you going to do anything to bring it out into the mainstream if you don't treat it that way, right? Another thing I feel that the industry needs is convergence in government policies and handling. So if I'm a weaver or a handicraft practitioner, my work is divided across policies, schemes, and people sitting across at least 7 to 8 industries, ministries. We have Ministry of Textiles, we have MSME, we have rural development, we have tribal welfare, we have commerce, we have finance, we have, I mean, the list goes on. There's commerce, the KVIC sits in the Ministry of Commerce. So there is no place where this converges. So if I'm looking to see today that what schemes are available out there, where do I even start to look? Where do I even start to see what, even if I'm an educated professional with access to the internet, where do I look to see what I can offer my artisan community? Okay, it's a jungle out there, and all of us struggle with this every single day. The other is the measurement of impact. If we do not have measurement of impact in terms of what our sector is doing for the GDP, which we don't, how can we raise a voice that is strong enough to impact policy? So measurement of impact that creative industries has across all the 360 aspects that we spoke about before and against the SDGs is really critical. And we haven't done it. We've done a little bit, There are some reports from Niti Aayog on our SDG impact, but the creative industries is mentioned only in passing. So if we were to look at something where we could have a definitive measurement of impact, it's already late for a baseline, but even if we started now and continued to measure as we went along, I think it would be much easier to make the case that we need to make. So these are a few things. I'm sure as practitioners, you will come across many others. So, please continue to share your ideas. Moving a little bit to what do the artisans need? The first thing is dignity. If you treat them as someone at the bottom of the pyramid who needs a handout, we've lost the battle. These are the most skilled people in our economy, and they should be treated as such. They should be at the top of the pyramid, to be honest. They do not receive the dignity either for their craft, for their skill, for their knowledge, or the work that they do. There is, they unfortunately in our country, they belong to marginalized communities. And given the caste and class structure, which is still very deeply embedded in our culture, they remain at the bottom of the pyramid. They are still struggling to make ends meet, to just survive. Income that they receive should help them to thrive. They should not be looking only at having 2 square meals a day. They should not have to think about food on the table, a roof over their heads, money for healthcare, being able to send their children to school. These are basics. These are basic human needs. Why is our craft community still struggling to make ends meet, right? Because we do not give them dignity. We are not willing to pay fair value for their products. We bargain. We try and push down prices. They do not even receive official minimum wage figures of the government, and if you look at, they are not even getting the minimum wage of unskilled labor, forget skilled workers, all right? So that is the reality on the ground. So why should, if I was an artisan, why would I want to continue in this field? Why would I want to wake up every day and continue to do what I do? Put yourself in their shoes and think about it. If something doesn't change, which is why, I'll give you an example. When we were working many years ago, when Manrega just started, within a year, we lost a huge number of our weavers from the looms. We were not being able to fulfill demand. I was still at Fab India at the time. We were not being able to fulfill demand. Orders were not getting completed, deliveries were not coming, and we could not understand why. When we drilled down, we realized that the weavers on the looms had quit their work. They had gone off to do the 100 days of Narega work that would give them assured wages, even if it was road construction or breaking stones. You realize what was happening. We were losing highly skilled artisans to completely unskilled work, just so that they could make sure that they got minimum wages and they could eat 2 square. I mean, it's shameful. I mean, collectively, it's shameful for us that we have a situation where they had to make that choice. That's, for me, it was unacceptable, to be honest. So, what else do artisans need? Artisans need demand for their product. They need regular work, and regular work can only come from demand for their products. And demand for their product can only come if their products are relevant to the contemporary world, which is where you come in. As design students, as producers, and as consumers, you need to be the ones constantly reinventing these products so that you can continue to use their skills, but in a relevant and contemporary way, all right? So this is on you. So please realize your responsibility in taking this forward. Okay. Another area that artisans really need is to feel empowered, to feel ownership of their skill and their talent and their work. There are many, many layers in the way we work today. You are the designer, I am the entrepreneur, the artisan is kind of at the bottom. He's the one making the product, but he has no say in anything at all. I will tell him, you will tell him the design, I will give him the working capital or the raw material, then I will connect him to the market. The market will sell the product, and everyone along the way takes their share from this. Where does it start? It starts with the artisan skill and the product that they make. And I think the ownership of that needs to shift to the artisan themselves. So one of the futures that I see is really building out more artisan entrepreneurs in our economy. Let them be the ones to really drive how this sector evolves. I would say in the last, just to give you a comparative, in the last 15 years, we have seen the emergence of design entrepreneurs. And you are one of them, design school graduates who go out and start their own businesses and become leading designers. And yes, they do work with the skills, traditional skills of the artisans, but there is still a divide. Where does the ownership lie? Where does the intellectual property lie? So I think one way to really shift the balance of power down to the grassroots level is to help develop more artisan entrepreneurs. And I'm not saying this can be done alone by them, but if we agree that this is one of the solutions that is needed, then let's help to make it happen. Let's work more as a team and less as a circle, and not so much as a pyramid. So, I mean, look at it that way, as an equal partner rather than a hierarchy, right? And artisans need recognition. They are invisible. They need to be acknowledged for their skill. If you go to Italy and are willing to spend 200 euros on a hand-stitched pair of leather shoes, why are you not willing to do that, buy that from your mochi, who has the same skill of hand-stitching leather and making a pair of perfectly fitted shoes for you? Will you pay him 200 euros? You won't. We do not recognize design, we do not recognize their skill, and we do not recognize what, their creative talent. So I think the recognition is not just government awards. Recognition is you and me in our everyday lives, recognizing them and acknowledging them for what they bring to us with their hands, right? Okay, so this is my last slide, and then we will open up to questions. So what can you do going forward? We're talking about opportunities, we're talking about the future, we're talking about reinventing the creative industries. So the first thing I feel is be aware. You are both now a producer and a consumer. Make every single choice of yours conscious. From the clothes that you buy to the shoes. Look up the statistics on how many years it takes for a sports shoe to decompose. It doesn't. I think it's 500 years or something. Do you buy a new pair of shoes every year, every month? How often do you buy clothes? How is the personal care products that you use, your shampoos, your creams, your toothpaste, your lipstick, your kajal, how are these produced? If you do not start questioning every single choice that you make, drill down, see where it's coming from, see how sustainably it's being produced. If you don't do that, you are perpetrating the problem. If you will continue, the more you consume, the more it will be produced. Do you go to hotels and use the small disposable plastic bottles of shampoo that they keep in the bathroom? Do you know what that does to the ecology? Millions and millions of these small plastic bottles are then produced so that you can use it when you're traveling. All right? Carry your own refillable shampoo. It's not that hard. Carry your own bottle of water. I mean, there are small choices that you can make every single day. You just have to be aware and you have to think about it, right? Change your perspective. Put yourself in the shoes of the artisan. Recognize and respect the hard work and treat them with dignity. All right? Again, think of this as a circle and not a pyramid. All right? Okay. Let's look at reducing layers and inequalities, not increasing them. Again, circle, not pyramid. Okay? And empower artisans to become entrepreneurs and to further create jobs in their communities. This is where the partnership comes in. You bring a very valuable resource and skill set for them because you form the urban connect. They have the skills on the ground. Okay? So bring in a group or a team that can form this circle. Yes, you need someone who understands working capital and how to approach a bank. You need someone who understands design. You need someone who has the skill. You need someone who can actually create a business. So come together and make it a circular economy. Right? And the last thing is collaborate. Don't work in silos. Share information. Make everything open source. I really think the future is where information is shared openly, freely, without holding on to it. We're in this together. Network as much as you can. Connect the different people in your different networks and be the change. This is how you can be the change. Everyone says be the change. How do you go about doing that? This is how you do it. In small, everyday decisions, in being aware, in being conscious, and really being authentic in your efforts to help. All right, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for listening. Let's go into questions if you have any. So Archana, over to you, Archana.
Thank you, Smita. I think that was really exhaustive and very descriptive and very insightful, if I look at. So you've tried to cover the perspective of a young designer who just probably finished her career, her education, or somebody who's wanting to step into the craft sector, or somebody who's already there. So I think, bringing in the sustainable development goals, the perspective, and what would be relevant to a country like us, because I understand the sustainable development goals are built from a global perspective, looking at different cultures and different countries and how they would be adapting and what their challenges are. So I think it was very interesting where you had actually very specifically pointed out the direct and the indirect ones, which actually impact us. So I think that was very meaningful in terms of young people. And I think we all can have an opportunity to continuously look at the sustainable development goals and see what fits well from our perspective, rather than just following because it's a part of the sustainable initiatives. Yes, so I do have a couple of questions, because we rolled out a Google form, and we have this young girl who's from SCAD, Savannah School, College of Art and Design, and she's saying that which is very interesting that and then I found, while you talked about relevance, there's a perspective that she's talking about is reluctance. She's saying, why does the craft community is so reluctant in terms of looking at new motives, new designs, or new product ideas, and rather than just wanting to stick to what they've been doing? So I think it's a dichotomy here, where there's one where we are looking at relevance, we are looking at the usability of it, we're wanting to make it more friendly, and on the other hand, there is a whole reluctance where how young people can then work with these people. So I think that's a mindset issue, right? So how do we look at the two getting together? Because of your experience being with Fab India and working with the Creative Dignity, yes, I think you can bring in some great insights here.
Yeah. Okay, so Reluctance is understandable. I mean, it's not just artisans and craftspeople, it's all of us. I think we resist change. We are not open to change. We're not open because it pushes us out of our comfort zone. And this is a human tendency. I mean, it happens to us at a personal level, it happens at professional levels. We get comfortable. We become good at doing something, it's working, and we think, why change it, if I don't have to? But what we don't realize, and I'm saying we because each one is equally responsible for this, is that if you don't change, um, you're not going to make it through. It's like there's that example of if you put a frog in a pot of water and light a flame below it, the water will warm up slowly and the frog won't even realize when it's cooked. All right, it won't jump out. It's different from if you throw a frog into boiling water. Okay, it will jump out immediately. But so we get comfortable. We get comfortable with our surroundings. We get comfortable with the way we've been doing things. But I think the first step is awareness, is to know that if we're stuck, I think the first step is recognizing this reluctance, not to fight it. It's part of the process. It's part of the process of change. Recognize it and try and understand where the core issue lies. Is it that if there is a change, he will lose an order, or it may be that the artisan has become known for doing this one lotus motif on everything, and that has become his identity. Okay, there are many like this. If he changes that, he's not sure if he's going to continue to receive orders and be able to earn a living. So to bring about a change, it has to be done gradually. Okay. We faced a very real example in the creative dignity process where artisans and producers were so used to producing against orders. They receive an order, they churn out 100, 500,000 pieces, and they deliver the order. They were not interested in proactively taking photographs, creating catalogs to try and sell the stock that they were sitting on. They were not used to it. They were not used to the B2C side of things because they had been operating in the B2B realm for so long, So it took, I think, some change comes when you're pushed into it, like COVID has fast-tracked digital literacy and digital adoption. In 2 months, we moved 2 years, all right? So we were forced into it. And some change comes from bringing awareness that this change is needed. So don't fight the reluctance, I think work with it, drill down, see where you can, and take small steps. It's small steps that lead up to big changes. So try it that way and hopefully it will work. And ultimately, if it comes down to survival, the change will happen. Whether you like it or not, the change will happen. So better to be proactive rather than reactive. That's what
Interesting perspective, Smita. I like the frog example. I was wondering why it has come there. But then when I look at the comfort zone that you're talking about, is COVID, the hot water that it has gotten everybody out of the comfort zone because we were into a rat race, rat race which was put for the whole world that this is the way success is, this is the way things are going to be. And I think it has just gotten us all to jump out, and I see, yes, while people see it, as you say, there's a lot of reluctance in terms of why would one want to accept it's almost like a bio-war that's going on. Nobody wants to accept it, but I think there is an opportunity that I see in terms of what has happened with digital literacy. I feel people being more comfortable at home and doing good work because we get our students' feedback. And we've been hearing our teachers, they're being very happy with the students, with the kind of output that they're bringing in. So yes, I know, but then I think there is, it has put us, back to square one, to really look at how things are going to happen in the future. So you're right about it, that we all have this habit of not accepting change very fast. So if I leave the artisan, community, that they are reluctant to it. Very, very positive, very positive. Somebody who's looking at, because there are a lot of young people here who have just graduated or are in the process of graduating, they have a lot of this fear, because we at our age, where we are now in our mid 40s or nearing 50, we've seen the best of life, right? We've seen the industrialization, we've seen the foreign goods, we've seen our culture, we've experienced almost everything. And I think we've been very lucky to have gotten all this. This generation is probably who had all the plans for the future, right? And it is all at a standstill right now, right? So again, if I have to say, with all your experience with Fab India, because it was completely revolutionary, right? In terms of having the craft community, become partners into it. Give me 2 to 3 tips very strongly for these young people who can really work with the crafts community, because today we don't need big, large formats because they're anyway dated now, right? We need these very unique, very smart, very relevant, very designed, aesthetically done, that kind of a perspective. So what are the skills young people need to have, right, as becoming design entrepreneurs? And what are the ways that they need to adapt while they have to work with these communities? Because your experience with the Creative Dignity has also given you perspective how the craftsman behavior and mind shift has also changed, right? So please bring the two together for us. I think that would be the good closing conversation.
Firstly, I'm very optimistic and hopeful for the future. So I really look at, it is very unfortunate that we had to have such a big shakeup to take a real good look at ourselves and what we have done to this planet. But honestly, I do not think as someone else, COVID as a problem that has happened to me. I am part of the problem, as each of us are. Our choices is what has brought us here. This is just one way of Earth, Mother Earth, telling us, look, stop, take a pause. You have caused so much destruction that you really need to stop and think about what you're doing. And this is just about pulling the brakes, stopping everything. Can you imagine? Nobody, not even science fiction, has imagined a scenario where every single person on the planet is locked up in their homes. It happened. It happened for months on end, all right? So it's a wake-up call. I see it as an opportunity. And I see the way, what we need to do is really learn our lesson. And what does this mean? It means being very aware of how we live and work and play and the choices that we make. Think about every single tiny choice that you're making. Are you buying your vegetables from the large online platform, or are you buying it from your local vendor who's going to the mandi, putting his life at risk, bringing it back, coming in a thela or at the neighborhood shop? These are small choices, but important ones to support people around you with dignity, all right? So I would say some of the skills that are needed, and not only design students or design entrepreneurs, but really all of us. I would say the number one is empathy. If you need to think beyond yourself, you need to think for other people. The second is collaboration. No longer is the world going to be, too long we have worked with me, myself, my house. My house is beautiful, but I'll throw my garbage out on the street, This is not going to work anymore. We have to work with each other, for each other. So we need to think beyond. And this is, so I would say, collaboration, empathy, and just be fearless and be open-minded. I've already talked about being a conscious producer and a conscious consumer. And this is something that is completely in your control as design entrepreneurs and when you engage with artisans on the ground. All right. So make them aware of things that you are aware of. You have the global perspective. You have the urban perspective. Share that with them. Learn from them the realities of their rural lives, their challenges on the ground. All right. So be open, listen, and work together. I see this me myself, my success, my growth, my company, this as a very old way of thinking and working. The future has to be about collaboration and openness. So that's my.
What I understand, Smita, you want to say is that if a young designer is approaching a craftsman, she needs to be empathetic, she needs to have patience, she needs to explore, she needs to be collaborative in terms of how she's working with the designer rather than directing or instructing. It has to be a more of a co-creation kind of process, right? And I think patience is going to be key here, because as people, we are all very impatient in terms of the results that we are looking at. So I think that's very profound in terms of, looking at from the perspective of both skill and competency and behavior and approach and attitude. Thank you so much for being here amidst us today again, Smita.